So I always loved art as a child. I took lots of classes. In high school, I took calligraphy, sculpture, drawing, and even in college, while I was pursuing a completely different course of study, I worked part-time at an ad agency doing graphic design. So I had a strong design and art background. I also had a background in gardening. I had two parents who loved to garden and who loved to visit gardens. Although I have to admit that I never really enjoyed it until I owned my first garden. And all of a sudden I realized that over the years of garden visits and time spent with my parents, I had accumulated a lot of knowledge of horticulture. And when I had my own garden, all of a sudden this knowledge came back to me, and combined with the aesthetic choices I was making about designing my own garden, I really enjoyed my time and realized that I wanted to spend more time.
And then, so that ended up my career. And what basically I did was take what I did to earn money, or the basic part of my money, to also include the love of my life, which was theater. And so what my suggestion for young people would be, explore what you want to do, find something that you like well enough to do, even if it's not your be-all and your end-all love, and then work the things that you want to do or you love to do, whether it is painting, whether it is travel, whether it is communicating in another way or form, so that you always have something that has a passion.
I'm a big fan of dipping your toe in the water and just trying one. Dip my toe in the water, and I tried one seminary class. And that was what hooked me. I decided, oh, I really want to do this, and I want to do more than one class. And in fact, I want to go full throttle and earn the degree. And yeah, so I actually left the job. We still attended that church, but I left the job because I knew that I could not do it all. My boys were still young, and I wanted to be a hands-on mother, and I wanted to be there, when they got off and on the school bus. And I went to seminary. I still went to seminary part-time.
Know that you have a wealth of experience and a really interesting career path. So I'd love it if you wouldn't mind giving us a bit more insight into some of the career changes that you've made or questions that you've had throughout your career and how you got to where you are now.
Well, I'm so glad to be able to give this interview. I hope that it will be of some use to people who are thinking about how to think about their careers. I would say plan their careers, but I'm convinced actually that nowadays a lot of people don't really plan their careers because they have a number of careers during their lifetimes. And in fact, I think that has been my case.
I realized during that period, I actually ended up going onto the children's school board, and I ended up doing some other things. My father passed away shortly during that period, and I was spending, I ended up spending 7 years doing his estate. And so I had this patchwork quilt of stuff I was doing. And I realized that I needed a way, when I wanted to re-enter the workforce, to tell the story of what that period was. And that's something that I really recommend to people who are on that place where you're thinking of having a family. And if you think you want to spend a good chunk of your time on your family, you need to think about, how am I also going to keep a storyline going that is about the work part of me?
I had a crisis of conscience late in my journalism career. I'd become an editor at a news magazine. And I just got tired of it. We had sort of a crazy boss, which is also something that everybody's got to contend with probably at one point in their life. And it was just an unhappy place for me. And I had learned over the course of my career to pay attention to your body, pay attention to what you're feeling, pay attention to things that set you off and make you mad, pay attention to things that make you feel thwarted. And I felt thwarted in that job, and I began to test the waters.
You talked a lot about hurdles that you faced during your career. What were resources that you used to overcome those hurdles, support systems?
I'm glad you asked. One of the things that I did once I had left an office setting and gone out on my own, although I really thought I was going to be raising kids, I didn't realize that I would also be doing architecture and have that opportunity. It was really a wonderful thing. I joined the AIA, the American Institute for Architects, and they have subgroups and they have classes. One of the things you have to do to keep and maintain your license is continuing education units. So that's exposed me to other architects, and I'm now involved in a Women in Architecture group.
And I were ordained, there was a man who delivered the charge to her. We were ordained on the same day and in two different services. And this man who delivered the charge to her was a retired pastor. He just recently retired from a church in Western New York and moved to Eastern New York. And he, in his charge to Judith, talked about taking care of body, mind, and spirit. And when the service was over, he made a beeline over to me and said, I want to be your mentor.
What's so interesting, he found you.
Yeah. He sought me out, which is a real gift. And what we wound up doing is deciding that we would play racquetball twice a week, taking care of my body. And then on Fridays, after we played at noon, we went to Wendy's and we each got a junior bacon cheeseburger and a drink and fries. And we would talk about what ministry was like.
It's very easy in the course of going through school and in career of becoming so obsessed with a specific stage of life that you kind of forget perspective.
I think that's really good advice. I think a lot of people go to networking events and, they're collecting these acquaintances instead of developing a deeper relationship. So what tips do you have for young people like me in making that relationship a bit deeper?
I've thought about that some, and I thought about what my habits were that caused me, even before in undergraduate and so forth, was that I'll just say that I tended to pick professors who instead of the topics for the most part when I was going through school, because I learned so much from being able to work with a professor outside of class as much as inside.
What value do you really find from being a mentor, and how do you think that young people can benefit from being a mentor?
Yeah, I think everybody should be a mentor. First of all, being a mentor is a selfish act because mentors get more out of the mentoring, I think, than the mentees do, or in Pathways Seekers. It's just a great experience, but more substantively, I think you learn about yourself that if you listen to what you say to the person that you're mentoring, you learn what your values are, and you find out what you care about. And as you listen to yourself articulate the things that matter to you to that person, you realize, gee, maybe that's advice I should listen to for myself. So it's a great experience, and you appreciate both sides of it, I think, that much more.
I wished I was as smart now as I was then, because I was ready to go and trying to get ahead. And I worked for Arthur Andersen back when it existed, and went to one of the senior partners and asked for some career advice. And he basically said, well, what's your definition of success? And I said, well, I guess it's to reach a certain level in an organization or to accomplish certain things. He goes, well, first of all, figure that out first. And the thing is, what success looks like when you're my age is a lot different than what success looks like in your 50 when you're 30. And so my suggestion is break it down.
Do you have recommendations for what to do for someone seeking a mentor? How to go about finding one?
Yes, I would say the number one is reach out, reach out, reach out. Most people are really willing and excited to share their stories of their lives with you. And so with Charlie, for example, here we are so many years later, and I still regularly will check in with him. It may be a year and we haven't spoken, and then I'll send him a little note with a question. So I think that folks are really willing to share their lives, and there is no harm in sending someone an email and asking them out for a cup of coffee. You don't know exactly what that might lead to.